The war had raged for centuries, spanning galaxies and consuming civilizations. The Galactic Fleet, an alliance of numerous species, had fought tirelessly against the Karath Empire, a ruthless and technologically superior alien race that seemed unstoppable. The Karath had brought suffering to countless worlds, annihilating colonies and enslaving those who resisted. But now, the tide had turned. The last Karath stronghold, a massive fortress world at the heart of their empire, had finally been breached. After years of preparation, the fleet's combined forces struck with overwhelming force. Across the galactic front, the victory was celebrated. On the planet Viorna, a member of the fleet's Council of Unity, the stars themselves seemed to shine brighter. Great holographic banners fluttered across the skies, depicting the unified fleet of species that had brought an end to the Karath reign. The cities were alive with joy. Species of all kinds gathered to commemorate the victory. Creatures with 6 arms, others with crystalline bodies, and some that communicated through sound frequencies unrecognizable to most. Yet in this moment, all were united by the shared cause they had fought for: peace. The leaders of the coalition met in a massive council hall, their faces illuminated by the dazzling light of the holographic display. There was a sense of camaraderie, a feeling of accomplishment that hadn't been felt in generations. Captain Orlan of the Vorn species, one of the most revered military figures, stood at the podium, raising his glass. To the end of tyranny, to the peace we have fought for, and the future that will now begin, he declared, his deep voice resonating through the grand hall. Cheers erupted from the assembly. It felt as though a chapter in history had finally closed. On the other side of the galaxy, the fleet's other commanders toasted in their respective capitals, sending waves of holographic cheers to each other across the vast distances. In the infinite expanse of space, a triumphant wave of relief washed over the galaxy's inhabitants. The Karath, known for their ruthless efficiency and barbaric tendencies, had never expected the tide to turn. Their once mighty fleets had crumbled under the weight of the coalition's unity and strength. Their most formidable warships lay in ruins, burned and shattered by the powerful combined weaponry of the Galactic Fleet. Even their homeworld, once thought impregnable, had fallen silent under the onslaught. The Karath Emperor himself had been captured alive, brought to the fleet's high command for what many hoped would be a long trial, followed by a moment of reckoning for his people. In the midst of this celebration, there was an odd feeling in the air, a sensation that, although fleeting, wasn't entirely comforting. As the festivities reached their peak, an officer on one of the fleet's flagship vessels noticed something on the galactic radar, a faint, anomalous signal. It was too weak to be fully detected at first, but its persistent frequency was enough to catch the attention of the fleet's intelligence division. "Probably a glitch," muttered Lieutenant Czar of the Zilith, a species known for their sharp eyesight and quiet demeanor. But even he felt an uncomfortable chill in the air as he stared at the blinking coordinates on the map. By the time the council had finished their celebration, the signal was no longer just a glitch. It had solidified into a steady pattern, originating from the farthest reaches of the galaxy, an area previously thought uninhabited and barren. The joyful atmosphere quickly shifted as more ships began picking up the signal. It wasn't coming from a Karath remnant. No, this was something entirely different. Something new. Something that none of them had expected. A cold, creeping dread filled the air as the fleet commanders exchanged wary glances. The galaxy's victory had been hard-won. But as the celebration continued, no one could shake the feeling that something was lurking just beyond the edge of their understanding, and that something was about to make itself known. The question remained: what was out there in the vastness of space, and why had it chosen now to emerge? The days following the initial signal detection were filled with urgency and uncertainty. The Galactic Fleet, still basking in the euphoria of their victory over the Karath, now found itself on high alert. The strange, weak signal that had initially been dismissed as a glitch now persisted, growing steadily stronger, more coherent. The fleet's intelligence division worked around the clock to analyze the transmissions, but they were unable to decipher any meaning. No known language or code matched the signals, and the pattern itself seemed almost deliberate. Whoever, or whatever, was behind it was sending a message, but it remained just out of reach. At the Council of Unity, the mood had shifted. The jubilant atmosphere was gone, replaced with an undercurrent of unease. Representatives from each species were now focused on the mysterious anomaly at the edge of the galaxy. The celebrations had turned into tense discussions about what action to take. Should they send a fleet to investigate? Should they ignore it? No one knew what they were dealing with, and no one wanted to make the wrong move. Captain Orlan stood in front of the council, his furrowed brow showing a rare sign of concern. This cannot be ignored. We've won the war, but we cannot afford to be complacent, he said, his voice steady but filled with purpose. If something is out there, we must know what it is. The last thing we need is another threat lurking in the shadows. The decision was made to investigate. A special reconnaissance fleet, led by the most experienced officers, would be dispatched to the coordinates of the mysterious signal. No one knew what they would find, but there was no option but to act. The fleet's commanders, despite their earlier celebrations, were now grappling with the uncertainty of the unknown. As the fleet made its way toward the signal's origin, every ship in the convoy was on edge. Communications were sparse, with only minimal contact between the vessels. The unknown had a way of making even the most seasoned officers uneasy. The darkness of space seemed heavier now, more foreboding, as the fleet approached the coordinates. It wasn't long before the fleet encountered a massive formation of ships. At first, it was just a few small dots in the distance, barely visible against the black backdrop of the galaxy. But as the fleet drew closer, the scale of the presence before them became apparent. These were no ordinary ships. They were immense, larger than anything the Galactic fleet had ever seen. Their designs were angular, sleek, and unnerving. The hulls of the ships shimmered with an energy field that was unlike any known technology. It was as if the ships were alive, their surfaces pulsing with an eerie light, each vessel in perfect alignment with the others. "Impossible," Lieutenant Zor whispered, his voice trembling. "These ships, they weren't here before." He was right. No one had ever seen anything like them. They were unlike any species design, and their technology was unlike anything the fleet had encountered. The ships seemed to almost hum as if resonating with an energy all their own. The reconnaissance fleet slowed, hesitant. No communication had been received, no sign of aggression or intent. Yet, the sheer size of the ships, each one far larger than even the flagship of the Galactic fleet, was enough to put anyone on edge. For a moment, the entire fleet hung in the balance, suspended between awe and fear. "Send a probe," Captain Orlan ordered, his tone firm. "We need to know who, or what, we're dealing with." The fleet's sensors deployed a series of probes, each one designed to gather data and scan for any signs of life, weaponry, or energy signatures. The probes moved cautiously, their systems designed to minimize detection. They approached the nearest ship, scanning its surface, its energy output. Then, as the probes got closer, they experienced an unexpected jolt. Their signals began to cut out, and one by one, the data streams began to flicker and die. The fleet's entire network of probes was being jammed. Captain Orlan's face darkened as the realization hit. They know we're here. The unknown fleet had made its first move, not with weapons or force, but with an overwhelming presence. It was as if they were waiting for something. The tension that had been building now reached its peak. The Galactic fleet had won a hard-fought victory, but they had no idea what was standing before them now. What they had assumed to be a moment of triumph was beginning to feel like a prelude to something far darker. In the distance, the enormous ships shifted. Not a word had been spoken, not a single transmission had been sent, but something had changed. The galaxy would never be the same again. The hours that followed were tense and filled with uncertainty. The reconnaissance fleet remained suspended in front of the mysterious armada, unable to move forward or retreat. The ships surrounding them loomed like silent sentinels, their dark, sleek forms giving off an unsettling aura. It was as if the unknown fleet was watching them, waiting for the right moment to act. The Galactic Fleet's command ship, *Vanguard*, was anchored at the center of the formation, its lights blinking like a heartbeat in the vast, silent expanse of space. On board, the Council convened again, trying to figure out what steps to take next. Captain Orlan, Admiral Days, a towering figure from the Xenar species, said with a growl in his voice, "We've tried every channel we have, every frequency, every diplomatic code. They're not responding, and our probes are useless." The Admiral was right. Despite every attempt to communicate, the unknown fleet refused to respond. The transmissions were all either blocked or simply absorbed by some unseen force. The silence was suffocating, and the longer it lasted, the more the tension grew. The victory celebrations from just days ago seemed like a distant memory. There was no time to reflect on past triumphs. They were facing something completely new, a threat, or maybe something else entirely. Orlan paced before the holographic map displayed in the command center. The array of glowing dots representing the fleet around him was unsettling, with the unknown ships now encircling them like a predator closing in on prey. The quiet was broken only by the soft hum of the ship's engines and the occasional whisper of officers exchanging quiet words. "We need answers, and we need them now," Orlan muttered to himself. He turned to his crew. "Initiate a low-frequency broadcast. No weapons, no threats. Just an invitation. If they are truly watching us, they will respond to this." Lieutenant Czar nodded from his station. He had been among the first to spot the unusual energy patterns when the fleet first detected the signal. His hand hovered over the controls, preparing to send out the communication. For several minutes, nothing happened. The silence in the room was nearly unbearable. The fleet held its breath, waiting. Orlan's fingers gripped the edge of the console as he waited for any sign that their message had been received. Then, as if by some unspoken cue, the ships of the unknown fleet shifted slightly, just enough to indicate awareness. They were responding, but not in any way the Galactic Fleet had expected. A lone ship detached itself from the formation, moving slowly toward the center of the fleet. It was a massive vessel, its hull dark and gleaming, unlike anything the Galactic Fleet had seen before. It glided forward with an almost unnatural grace, its engines humming with an energy that sent ripples through space itself. The other ships remained perfectly still, as if they were holding their breath. The crew aboard the *Vanguard* watched in tense silence. They could sense that this was it. First contact, the moment the galaxy had been waiting for, yet dreading. Then, suddenly, the massive vessel came to a halt in front of the fleet. But there was no communication, no message, no signs of intent. The ship did not fire weapons, nor did it make any attempt to interact with the *Vanguard* or the fleet surrounding it. Instead, it sat in the void, waiting. "We're not going to get anything from them through conventional means," Orlan said, his voice tight. "We need to think differently. We need to make them understand we're not a threat. Let's try a different approach." His orders were clear. Open the ship's communication channels to send a direct transmission. This time, no shields were raised. No weapons were prepared. Just a simple offer of peace, a single, unguarded plea. "I am Captain Orlan of the Galactic Fleet," he began, speaking directly to the unknown ship. "We have come to you in peace. We seek understanding and knowledge. We are not your enemies. We want only to communicate." For what felt like an eternity, there was nothing. Not a flicker of light, not a single response. The massive ship hung in space, its presence almost suffocating. The entire fleet sat in a heavy silence, the air growing thicker with every passing moment. Then, without warning, a deep hum filled the *Vanguard*. It resonated through the ship's hull, vibrating in the bones of everyone on board. A single message, in a voice that was neither male nor female, but something entirely unfamiliar, crackled through the speakers. "We are Earth. We have watched. We have waited. Now you will listen." The transmission ended as abruptly as it had started. The words hung in the air like a challenge, or perhaps a warning. The room was frozen in disbelief. The voice had come from the unknown fleet, but it had said something else entirely, something no one had expected. Earth. How could that be possible? Earth had been lost to history, a forgotten world, a place that had vanished long ago. And now, it seemed, Earth had returned, and with it, a power none of them could comprehend. The silence in the Vanguard was broken only by the low hum of the ship's systems, but it felt as if the galaxy itself had just shifted. Everything they thought they knew was about to be challenged. The revelation that the mysterious fleet identified itself as Earth shook the entire galactic fleet to its core. The room aboard the Vanguard was filled with stunned silence. Captain Orlan stood motionless, his hands clasped tightly in front of him, as the reality of the transmission sank in. Earth, lost to history, thought to have perished in some long-forgotten conflict, had somehow survived and returned, more powerful than any of them had imagined. "How is this possible?" whispered Lieutenant Czar, barely able to keep his voice steady. "Earth was destroyed millennia ago." Orlan shook his head, trying to regain his focus. "We need to understand more. This changes everything." "But how? How did they come back?" Before anyone could respond, the hum of the ship's communication systems suddenly grew louder, and the voice from Earth spoke again, colder and more precise this time. "You do not understand. Your victory over the Karath means nothing. You are too weak to protect this galaxy. We are here to ensure order. And you will fall in line or face the consequences." The transmission ended, and the room fell back into tense silence. The words echoed in everyone's minds, a direct challenge from Earth, a planet believed to be nothing more than a forgotten myth. The magnitude of what had just happened weighed heavily on the crew. It was not just a warning. It was a declaration. Earth was not here to negotiate. They were here to dominate. Admiral Days was the first to speak, his voice low but firm. "This cannot be ignored. We may have fought the Karath, but this is different. Earth has always been thought of as a primitive world, but now, they're saying they've been watching us all along." Captain Orlan stepped forward. "We need to act quickly. This fleet is not a response to our victory. This fleet has been waiting, watching, and now they're here. We can't afford to assume we can simply negotiate with them." The crew's concerns grew as the massive ships of the unknown fleet, the Dreadnoughts, moved silently into position. They seemed to be preparing something, though there was no indication of what it could be. But one thing was clear. They were not a peaceful presence. The way the ships aligned themselves in perfect formation made the galactic fleet uneasy. Their sheer size and silent movements spoke of a force that could wipe out entire systems if it so desired. Without warning, the lead dreadnought fired a brilliant beam of energy, cutting through the emptiness of space. The beam struck a small, unmanned scout ship from the galactic fleet, instantly disintegrating it. The explosion sent shockwaves through the fleet. The fleet commanders watched in horror as their sensors confirmed the destruction of the scout ship. "They'd fired on us," shouted Czar, his voice shaking. "We're under attack." Orlan's face hardened. "Return fire. Prepare all weapons. Get the fleet into defensive positions." Immediately, the Vanguard and the rest of the galactic fleet's ships powered up their weapons. Energy shields flared to life, ready to absorb any incoming attack. The fleet's heavy artillery, long-range cannons, and missile systems locked onto the approaching dreadnoughts, preparing for retaliation. They fired a volley of plasma charges and disruptor beams at the incoming ships, hoping to force them into retreat. But the dreadnoughts didn't retreat. Instead, their energy shields shimmered and absorbed the incoming fire without so much as a ripple. Every weapon fired by the Galactic fleet simply dissipated upon contact with the shields, like raindrops hitting a solid wall. The Dreadnoughts remained as unfazed as ever. "What are they made of?" Zar gasped, eyes wide in disbelief. Orlan gritted his teeth. "It doesn't matter. Fire everything we've got. Push them back." The Vanguard weapons discharged once more, a storm of fire streaking toward the nearest dreadnought. But again, the attacks seemed ineffective. The beams of energy hit the shields, only to vanish without a trace. The silent, menacing ships continued to advance, their movements precise and deliberate. "Captain," Lieutenant Zar called out, his face pale as he watched the monitors. "They're not just absorbing our attacks. They're redirecting the energy. It's like they're using it to power their ships." Before anyone could react, a second blast from the lead dreadnought struck one of the Galactic fleet's destroyers. This time, the ship didn't just absorb the blast. It was torn apart. The mighty vessel shattered into a million pieces, scattering debris into space. The fleet commanders watched in stunned silence, realizing that the strength of these ships was beyond anything they could have imagined. Orlan's mind raced. There had been no warning, no signs that Earth had rebuilt itself into such a terrifying force. They had not just returned from extinction. They had come back with technology that defied everything the Galactic fleet knew about warfare. It was clear now that this was no mere encounter. This was a battle, one that the Galactic fleet was losing. The destruction of the destroyer sent a ripple of panic through the ranks of the Galactic fleet. The sight of the ship breaking apart under the Dreadnought's brutal attack left everyone in shock. Captain Orlan's face was grim, and the crew could feel the weight of his decision hanging in the air. There was no turning back now. The unknown fleet, Earth's Dreadnoughts, had shown their power, and there was no question that they were ready to wipe out any opposition that dared to challenge them. "Order the fleet to regroup," Orlan barked, trying to keep his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "We need to maintain formation and fall back. We cannot win this fight head-on." Admiral Days, his own heart pounding, gave the order for the fleet to retreat to a safer distance. The ships scattered, maneuvering away from the dreadnoughts, but it was clear that they couldn't outrun them. The massive, towering ships had already proven that their energy shields were near impenetrable, and that their offensive capabilities were beyond anything the Galactic fleet had encountered. "We're not going to get far, Captain," Zar warned, watching the screens as the dreadnoughts slowly but steadily advanced, matching the fleet's movements. "They're faster than they should be. It's almost like they're predicting our moves." Orlan's grip on the command chair tightened as his mind raced. This wasn't a random encounter. This was something else entirely. The fleet's defensive weapons weren't even leaving a dent, and their evasive maneuvers were futile. It felt like they were being herded into a corner, with no way out. "I know," Orlan muttered, his voice low. "They're anticipating us. We're dealing with more than just advanced technology here. Whoever is commanding them, they know us. They've studied us." His suspicion was quickly confirmed when the lead dreadnought sent out another transmission, this one broadcasting across all frequencies. The voice from Earth spoke again, its tone colder, more commanding than ever. "You cannot escape. You will not win. Earth has returned, and your time is over. The galaxy will kneel before us." The words echoed through the fleet's communication systems, sending a chill through everyone aboard the Vanguard and the rest of the ships. Earth wasn't just a forgotten world anymore. It had come back as something unrecognizable, something far more dangerous. And it wasn't here to negotiate. It was here to conquer. The realization hit Orlan like a tidal wave. Earth had somehow avoided destruction. It had found a way to rebuild, to rise from the ashes of its long-lost history. And now it had returned, not as a peaceful race, but as an overwhelming force with the power to crush anyone in its path. "Prepare the emergency beacon," Orlan ordered. We need to send a distress signal to the closest allied systems. Let them know what's happening here. We need reinforcements, and fast." But before the beacon could be activated, another blast from the lead dreadnought tore through space, narrowly missing the Vanguard *. The shockwave sent the ship veering off course, alarms blaring as the crew struggled to regain control. The rest of the fleet wasn't faring any better. Ships were being picked off one by one, the dreadnoughts effortlessly dismantling anything in their path. "Sir, we can't hold out much longer," shouted Lieutenant Czar, panic creeping into his voice as he watched several more ships explode in a fiery blaze on the screens. Orlan's mind raced as the situation spiraled out of control. They were hopelessly outmatched. His thoughts flashed to Earth. What had happened to it? How had it changed so dramatically? The Earth he remembered was nothing like this, a humble, distant world. But now, it was something much more terrifying. "We need to make a choice," Orlan said, his voice calm but resolute. "We can't win this battle, but we can delay them long enough to get the message out. They want us to surrender, but we're not going down without a fight." The Vanguard shifted into its final defensive posture, its shields flaring to full intensity. Orlan turned to his crew, his expression unyielding. "This is it. We fight for time. We fight for the galaxy." The crew readied themselves for the final stand. Weapons systems powered up, and the fleet's remaining ships closed in around the Vanguard determined to protect their captain, their home, and their galaxy. They were vastly outclassed, but they would not go down without giving everything they had. The dreadnoughts, seemingly unconcerned by the futile resistance, moved forward with relentless precision. Their attack was not a matter of if, it was only a matter of when. And Orlan knew that the true fight was just beginning. The galaxy had already felt the first blow of Earth's wrath, and there would be no going back. As the final preparations were made, the voice from Earth crackled through the communication systems one more time, its chilling final words sending a shiver down the spine of every officer aboard the Vanguard *. "Earth is the future, and you will bow." The battle had taken a devastating turn. The Galactic fleet was reeling, losing ships at an alarming rate, their weapons useless against the impenetrable shields of the Earth fleet. The atmosphere aboard the Vanguard * was thick with tension, each crew member bracing for the inevitable. Captain Orlan stood firm at the helm, his eyes locked on the screens, his mind calculating their options. It was clear that time was running out, and the dreadnoughts were closing in, their silence as unnerving as their overwhelming power. "Captain," Czar said, his voice tight with desperation, "we've lost contact with 3 more ships. At this rate, we'll be next." Orlan didn't respond immediately. His gaze remained fixed on the vast void outside the Vanguard, where the massive Earth dreadnoughts floated like dark giants. The fleet was crumbling, and he knew the inevitable was closing in. Yet even as hope seemed to fade, a single thought struck him with piercing clarity. There had to be a way. There had to be something they could do. "We need to buy more time," Orlan said, his voice steady, though it barely masked the urgency. "Lieutenant, initiate a full-spectrum jammer. We need to cut off their communications. If we can prevent them from coordinating their attacks, we might have a chance to regroup." Czar's fingers flew over his controls, inputting the necessary commands to activate the jammer. Within seconds, the fleet's communication systems began to emit a low-frequency hum as they transmitted a powerful interference signal. The electronic chatter on the communication channel went silent, and for a brief moment, Orlan allowed himself to hope that they might have disrupted Earth's ability to coordinate their forces. But it wasn't enough. The lead dreadnought moved forward once more, firing a massive energy beam directly at the Vanguard. The blast ripped through the ship's shields, sending shockwaves through the hull. Sparks flew from control panels as systems flickered, but the Vanguard held steady. The shields held firm for the moment, but Orlan knew that wouldn't last much longer. "Reinforcements," Orlan murmured under his breath, as if the very word could summon them. If they didn't get help soon, the fleet would be destroyed. The galaxy would fall under Earth's wrath, and their civilization would be crushed beneath the boots of an unknown power. The thought of that loss, of losing everything, spurred him into action. "Activate the emergency beacon," Orlan ordered. "Send out a signal to every allied system. We need reinforcements now. Even if we're too late, someone has to know what's happening here." Zar hesitated, glancing over at the captain with concern. "Captain, the Dreadnoughts have blocked every attempt at long-range communication. I'm not sure it will go through." Orlan looked over at the lieutenant, a fire in his eyes. "Do it anyway." Zar nodded, quickly bypassing the usual communication protocols to send out a distress signal. It was a long shot, but it was their only chance. As the Vanguard continued to stand its ground, an unexpected development caught the crew off guard. One of the Dreadnoughts, the largest ship in the fleet, suddenly shifted course, heading away from the Galactic fleet's formation. It began to drift toward the outer rim of the battlefield, its massive engines firing softly as it moved with slow, deliberate precision. The other Dreadnoughts held their positions, not advancing, but not retreating either. "Why are they leaving?" Lieutenant Zar asked, his voice filled with confusion. "Did we do something?" Orlan didn't have an answer, but his instincts told him that something wasn't right. The massive ship, now a distance away from the battle, seemed to be awaiting something. A signal, perhaps. A change in tactics. Just as Orlan was about to issue an order to follow, the communication system on the Vanguard flickered back to life. A new transmission came through, faint and distorted at first, but it became clearer with each passing second. "This is Admiral Kran of the Kilor Alliance," came a crackling voice over the comms. "We received your distress signal. We're en route." Orlan's heart skipped a beat. "Admiral Kran, you're here." "Yes, Captain." It wasn't easy. The interference was unlike anything we've ever faced, but we're coming. We'll be in range within the hour. Hold on just a little longer. Orlan's mind raced. The Kilor Alliance was one of the most powerful factions in the galaxy, and their intervention could change everything. They had the firepower to stand toe-to-toe with Earth's fleet. But the question remained. Why had Earth allowed this signal to go through? The massive dreadnought that had separated itself from the battle seemed to respond to the incoming transmission. Its engines flared, its massive hull trembling, as if it had received some command. The battle seemed to pause for a moment as both sides held their breath, waiting for the next move. Then the answer came, though it wasn't what anyone expected. "Earth will never kneel," came the voice once more, its tone now laced with something else. Resignation. "But perhaps you can listen." A strange silence followed. And then, the unexpected happened. The dreadnoughts, still overwhelming in their presence, powered down their weapons. The message was clear. The next chapter of this conflict had begun. And for the first time, the Galactic fleet had a glimmer of hope. For a brief moment, the vast emptiness of space felt like it had come to a standstill. The deadly dreadnoughts, which had moments ago relentlessly pressed forward, halted their advance. Their massive forms loomed ominously in the distance, but there was no immediate threat. The sudden shift in behavior left the crew of the Vanguard confused and wary. What had just happened? Why had Earth's fleet, after showing such overwhelming force, backed off? Captain Orlan stood at the command center, his eyes glued to the screens as he watched the dreadnoughts. The incoming Kilor Alliance fleet was still some time away, but the unexpected pause in hostilities had given the Galactic fleet a rare breath of relief. But even as the immediate danger seemed to recede, Orlan knew better than to assume victory. They were far from safe. "Lieutenant Zar, keep monitoring their communications," Orlan ordered. "There's no way they would have just stopped without a reason. They're preparing for something." Zar nodded, his fingers flying over the console as he checked all frequencies. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the hum of the Vanguard's systems. "Nothing yet, Captain," Zar said after a tense pause. "It's almost like they've gone dark. No transmissions, no changes in energy levels." Orlan's mind raced. It was clear that Earth's fleet had been studying them, analyzing their tactics and technologies. But now it seemed as though they were waiting for something Orlan couldn't quite understand. Suddenly, the Vanguard's communication systems flickered, and the voice from Earth returned. This time, it was different. The tone was not hostile, but not friendly either. It was cold, calculating, yet oddly composed. "We have been watching you," the voice said. "We have seen your strength and your failures. You think you understand the galaxy, but you do not. Earth was born from the ashes of conflict, and we were forged in its wake. You will never comprehend the price we have paid." The crew of the Vanguard was silent, listening intently, unable to tear their eyes away from the screens as the voice continued. "We have no desire for war, but we will not allow weakness to fester. The galaxy is ours to protect, and those who would challenge us will find themselves crushed under our might." Orlan's stomach twisted as the words sank in. It was clear that Earth wasn't just asserting dominance. It was trying to justify its return. Earth wasn't offering peace. It was offering a new order, one that would reshape the galaxy in its own image. The voice paused, and then, almost as an afterthought, it added, "But there is one chance for you. One final decision. Surrender your fleets. Disband your governments. Submit to Earth's leadership. We will give you a place in our new world. Refuse, and there will be no mercy." The transmission cut off, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. The crew of the Vanguard stood motionless, their eyes wide with disbelief. No one had expected this. No one had prepared for Earth to extend an olive branch, only to have it wrapped in the sharpest of thorns. "What do we do now, Captain?" Zar asked, his voice low, filled with uncertainty. Orlan's hands clenched into fists, his mind torn between the urge to resist and the reality that Earth's power was overwhelming. Their fleet was in disarray, their reinforcements still hours away, and the Dreadnoughts outmatched them in every way. "We fight," Orlan said, his voice quiet but firm. "But we fight smart. We don't surrender. We can't let Earth's grip tighten on the galaxy. We hold on, and we make sure they know we're not just going to roll over." Zar nodded, understanding the weight of the captain's decision. They couldn't give up. Not now. In the distance, the Telor Alliance fleet was finally closing in, its powerful ships cutting through the void at high speed. Orlan could see their formations coming into view, and a sliver of hope returned. Maybe, just maybe, this battle wasn't over. But there was something he couldn't shake. Earth's sudden withdrawal. Their cryptic message. It all felt like a carefully planned move. Orlan had no doubt that Earth was playing a much larger game, and they were just pawns on the chessboard. But he couldn't afford to waste time dwelling on it. The fleet had to hold until the Telor Alliance arrived. The fate of the galaxy was hanging in the balance, and every moment was critical. "Lieutenant, send out a call for all remaining ships to converge," Orlan ordered. "We make our stand here. This isn't just about survival anymore. It's about showing Earth that the galaxy won't bow to them." As the Vanguard moved into position alongside the remaining ships of the Galactic fleet, Orlan stood tall, staring at the distant, looming dreadnoughts. This wasn't just a battle for control. It was a battle for the soul of the galaxy. The standoff had begun, and it would be a fight to the very end. The Vanguard and the remaining ships of the Galactic fleet had positioned themselves in a defensive formation, their weapons powered up, shields raised high. The silence of space was almost deafening as they waited for the inevitable. The Telor Alliance fleet was now on the horizon, closing the distance with impressive speed. But the truth remained. Earth's dreadnoughts were still in control, and no one knew how much longer they could hold out. Captain Orlan stood at the command center, his hands gripping the edge of the control panel. His mind was a blur of strategy, calculations, and the ever-present sense of urgency. The galaxy was on the brink, and he couldn't afford to make a misstep. The decision made earlier, to fight, not to surrender, had to be more than just words. It had to be a stand that would resonate across every corner of the galaxy. The Telor ships, massive and sleek, arrived just in time. Their energy signatures flared brightly as they entered the system, sending a surge of relief through the crew. Their power was undeniable, their presence a stark contrast to Earth's looming fleet. These ships weren't just reinforcements, they were hope. Yet, as Orlan observed them from the viewport, he couldn't shake the feeling that Earth had expected this. The Dreadnoughts, having seen the Alliance fleet approach, began to shift their position again, slowly but steadily. It was a deliberate movement, as if they were carefully calculating their response. Orlan's heart raced. Earth had already proven that they could dismantle entire fleets, but now they were up against a larger, more formidable force. This was no longer a question of who was stronger. It was a question of who could outlast the other. "Captain," Zar's voice broke through Orlan's thoughts. "The Telor ships are entering position, but Earth is not responding. They're waiting." "I know," Orlan replied, his tone grim. "They're giving us a chance to make the first move. They want us to come at them. They want us to be the aggressors." But Orlan wasn't foolish enough to fall into that trap. He needed to make Earth's fleet react, not the other way around. "We'll hold our ground," Orlan ordered. "No one moves unless they force our hand. We make them respond, and when they do, we strike together. The Telor fleet will be our backup. No one else is coming. This is it." As the Telor ships aligned themselves alongside the vanguard, their powerful weapon systems activating in preparation, a strange tension filled the air. The crews of both fleets were on edge, aware that this might be the defining moment of the entire war. Minutes passed. The vastness of space seemed to stretch infinitely, the calm before the storm weighing heavily on everyone. The Dreadnoughts held their position, their massive forms eerily silent, their weapons still. For a moment, it felt like time itself had frozen. Then, the voice from Earth crackled across the communication systems once again. The tone was almost taunting, as though they were enjoying the slow buildup of tension. "Your reinforcements have arrived." "How quaint," the voice said, its coldness cutting through the silence like a blade. "But you are too weak to challenge us. This galaxy will fall, and your resistance will be crushed. All you are doing is delaying the inevitable." A harsh laugh followed, the sound of it somehow more terrifying than any weapon they had faced. Orlan felt the anger rise within him, but he fought to keep it in check. Earth's words were nothing more than an attempt to break their morale. They had already struck fear into the hearts of the fleet with their sheer might. But now, they had to prove that they were more than just a broken galaxy waiting to be conquered. "You want to fight?" Orlan said, his voice low but firm. "Then we'll give you one." With a single motion, he gave the signal for the fleet to advance. The vanguard and the Telor ships surged forward, their engines roaring to life as they raced toward Earth's waiting dreadnoughts. Every crew member braced for impact, knowing that what came next would determine their fate. The dreadnoughts seemed to wait for the moment of engagement. Then, without warning, they fired. Massive beams of energy shot forward, searing the void of space. The * Vanguard * shields flared as they took the brunt of the hit, but the ship held firm. The Telor ships didn't hesitate, returning fire with devastating force. The battle had begun. The clash was nothing short of catastrophic. The void lit up with explosions as the dreadnoughts fired with precision and overwhelming power. But the Telor ships were not to be underestimated. Their return fire was relentless, hitting the Earth fleet with unprecedented force. Orlan watched as the Vanguard fired its full complement of weapons at the nearest dreadnought. The energy beams hit, and for the first time, they seemed to do some damage. The dreadnought shuddered, its shields flickering, a sign that Earth wasn't invulnerable. "We can do this," Orlan muttered to himself as the * Vanguard * maneuvered to avoid another barrage. "We can win this." The galaxy had just witnessed the beginning of something far greater than a battle. It was a war for the future, for survival, and for freedom. Earth may have thought it could crush the galaxy's spirit, but the resistance had only just begun.